Hello and welcome to Stories of Science. Here, we look back on humanity's long journey to understand the world. The questions, the failures, and the breakthroughs that slowly changed how we see the universe and ourselves. We tell science as stories. She lived on bread and tea, then changed the world with a glow. If you were holding a glowing stone in your hand, would you think it's amazing or terrifying? Most people would step back, some might even call the police. But not her. She would stare at it, eyes lighting up like she'd just found buried treasure. To her, it was beautiful, not the ordinary kind of beauty, the quiet kind, of the kind that glows in the dark, like it's keeping a secret. And here's the wild part. She didn't just look at it, she carried it in her pocket, took it home or left it by her bed. At night, she'd turn off the lights, and her room would softly glow, like something out of a sci-fi movie. Except it wasn't fiction. It was her everyday life. Sounds romantic, right, like someone who made friends with light itself. But here's the twist. That glowing stone eventually killed her. Slowly, silently. No explosion. No screams. Just time doing what time does best, taking everything, one piece at a time. And she, from beginning to end, she never knew. Let me introduce you to her. Marie Curie. If the name rings a bell, that's no accident. She wasn't just extraordinary, she was history-making. The first woman to ever win a Nobel Prize, not one, two. Physics, chemistry. Two completely different worlds, and she conquered both. A true double champion. In an era when women were barely allowed into universities, she didn't just enter science. She rewrote the rules. Some say she changed medicine, and they're right. X-rays, radiation therapy, technologies that still save lives today, they all trace back to her work. Others say she changed war, because she brought mobile X-ray units to the battlefield, letting doctors see inside the human body for the first time. And then there's the biggest shift of all, how we understand atoms. Before her, atoms were thought to be stable, quiet. She showed the truth. Atoms aren't calm. They're restless, they release energy, they glow. By now, you might be thinking, this woman sounds a little crazy. And honestly, you wouldn't be wrong. While others wore necklaces, she wore radioactive elements. Fashion says, glow is trendy. She'd probably say, no, it's an occupational hazard. But here's the thing. This story doesn't begin in a lab. It doesn't begin with light. It begins in darkness. In a country that wasn't free. In a time when even language was controlled. And with a girl who wasn't allowed to go to university. That's where the real story starts. She was born in Poland. But at the time, Poland wasn't really Poland. It was under Russian control. You could say she was dealt a bad hand from the very beginning, and every card looked worse than the last. Her family wasn't wealthy, but it was rich in something else, knowledge. Both her parents were teachers, they had books everywhere, more books than food, some days. Imagine that. A house overflowing with ideas, but an empty stomach. While other kids grew up with cartoons, she grew up in a real-life tragedy. Loss came early. Her mother passed away, then her sister. At an age when most children are just learning how the world works, she learned something harsher. The world doesn't play fair. Some people cry, she thought. Some people complain, she acted. Books became her closest companions. Between the lines, she found freedom. In knowledge, she found a temporary escape from pain. But life didn't give her much rest. If you asked her, doesn't that make you sad? She might shrug and say, sadness is small. Solutions matter more. She learned early on, life doesn't have to make sense, but you can still make sense of life. She dove into science, math, physics, chemistry. Every page she turned felt like digging for treasure. While others played with toys, she played with equations. While others learned to ride bikes, she learned to understand the universe. No playground, no candy, just shadows, books, and an endless curiosity. Every setback, she quietly stored away, because she believed something powerful. One day, all of this pain would become strength. She was brilliant, but she was also alone. More than once, she asked herself, why is the world so unfair to girls? Why are the doors of knowledge closed? Her answer was simple. If the door is locked, I'll build my own. Between pain and books, she found balance. Between darkness and curiosity, she found light. Inside her, a seed had already been planted. Stubborn, resilient, impossible to erase. She understood something most people take years to learn. If fate won't be kind to you, you must be kind to yourself. So she made a decision. She wouldn't wait for opportunities, she would create them. No matter how heavy the shadows, they couldn't dim her vision. No matter how cold reality was, it couldn't extinguish her fire. That was her beginning. A small seed, growing quietly in the dark. The wind could shake it, the rain could beat it down. But as the saying goes, where there's a will, there's a way. And she was already on her way to rewriting the rules of the world. University? For women back then, that wasn't a goal, it was a luxury. She wanted to learn, but the system shut her out. The door had a sign. No women allowed. Some people would give up. She smiled, a stubborn, quiet smile. Instead of breaking the door, she went around it. She made a deal with her sister. Her sister would go study first, she would stay behind and work. It wasn't just a promise, it was strategy. Sometimes, the long way around is the only way forward. So she became a governess, teaching children math, grammar, and slipping in a little philosophy when she could. Her students learned multiplication as she learned patience. While others built careers, she built endurance. Her classroom? A small room at home, her blackboard? Her battlefield. And then love came knocking. A deep, unforgettable love. But it didn't last. Why? Class difference. In simple terms, love lost to background checks. She later joked about it. Love lost to KPI, family status. It sounds harsh, but she laughed. Because she understood something important. Crying doesn't change the future, planning does. She didn't break as she didn't sink. Instead, she made a bigger decision. Bigger than love, bigger than comfort. She would go to Paris. Paris, the city that shimmered in her imagination. A place of knowledge, opportunity, possibility. Her luggage was light, but her ambition? Heavy. She was going to prove something, that a girl could take control of her own destiny. Leaving home wasn't easy. Poland's winters were cold, the streets were unforgiving. But as she boarded that train, there was something burning inside her. A fire. At every stop, she reminded herself, if the rules are unfair, rewrite them. Her first day in Paris. The air smelled like books and coffee, the streets buzzed with life. Her eyes lit up. This was her stage and her battlefield. She knew the future wouldn't hand her applause. She would have to earn it, step by step. From a small room back home, to the heart of Paris. Twisted path or not, it beat giving up. Love failed, education denied, reality hit hard. But she endured. With humor against pain, with plans against uncertainty. Every rejection became fuel. And now, in Paris, a new chapter was about to begin. Books in her hands, dreams in her heart. No shadow could stop her. No rule could contain her. Paris wasn't just a city. It was opportunity itself. And she was ready to show the world. She wasn't someone who waited for chances. She created them. The seed that grew in darkness had finally reached sunlight. The wind could howl, the rain could fall. But she would grow. And one day, she would bloom into something that changed the world forever. She finally arrived in Paris. The gates of the Sorbonne opened for her, and for a moment, it felt like the dream was right there, within reach. But reality? It hit like winter wind. Her life was brutally poor, cold that cut through your bones, hunger that didn't politely knock, it stayed. While others lived in heated rooms, she stayed in a thin, drafty attic. Someone once asked her, "How do you even survive like this?" She smiled. "Bread and tea." That was it, bread and tea. On special days, an upgrade. Bread with butter. Sounds fancy, right? She joked, "Tonight, I get 2 slices of butter." Luxury life. And somehow she meant it. Because here's the thing. Paris was cold outside, but inside her? It was warm. Warmer than any fireplace. Because knowledge burns hotter than fire. She walked through snow with worn-out shoes that leaked. Her clothes looked like they belonged in a museum. But she didn't complain. Every step in the cold only made her want one thing more, the warmth of understanding. In class, she was unstoppable. like a sponge absorbing everything. Physics? First place, math? Second. While others were still catching up, she was already solving equations that made heads spin. Professors started paying attention. She joked about it, of course. Top of the class, still broke. She saved money on everything, even lamp oil. Some nights, she studied under a flickering candle, shivering as she read. But not once did she say, "This is unfair." Because she saw it differently. Every tear? An investment? Every freezing night? A deposit. All going into what you might call her future genius account. Life, of course, isn't powered by equations alone. There was still hunger. She sliced her bread paper thin, sipped tea slowly, stretching every moment. "Don't you feel hungry?" someone asked. She grinned. "Hunger? No, this is discipline training." Humor was her shield. Friends were few, loneliness followed her like a shadow. But loneliness has a strange side effect. It sharpens focus. While others chased fun, she chased understanding. While others chased love, she chased truth. And then, she met someone, just as unusual as she was. A mind full of equations, a heart full of curiosity. Their conversations didn't sound like normal conversations. They sparked, like two charged particles drawn together. Suddenly, Paris didn't feel so cold anymore. Even loneliness started to feel warm. She met Pierre Curie. Two people both powered by formulas. Dating? They talked physics. Some people said that wasn't romantic. She laughed. Solving equations together, that's romance. They got married. No rings. Just a bicycle. Someone asked her what the wedding was like. She said, "Deluxe edition bicycle." Honeymoon? Not beaches. They rode bikes and talked physics. Wind in their faces, hair a mess, laughing louder than their calculations. People didn't get it. They didn't care. The lab they worked in? Not impressive. More like a broken shed, barely better than a storage room. Old equipment, chemical smells in the air. Others would complain. They felt at home. Because science was more exciting than comfort. Every morning, bike ride to the lab. Notebook, ideas, curiosity, all packed along. Lunch, bread and tea. Sometimes, upgrade, bread and butter. Luxury, she'd say with a smile. At night, they worked through equations, occasionally arguing not about feelings, but whose solution was more elegant. "Where's the love?" people asked. She smiled. "Right there when the experiment works." They pushed each other. When he got stuck, she helped. When she struggled, he guided. Two minds, like gears, perfectly aligned. No need for long explanations. They understood each other instantly. They became something rare. A scientific power couple. Their shared obsession? Radium or polonium. Liquids glowing in glass containers and their eyes glowing right back. Others saw surface. They chased essence. Every drop. Every measurement. A step closer to history. "Are you too crazy?" people asked. She laughed. "Scientist-level crazy." On the streets of Paris, they rode side by side. Cold wind, ringing bicycle bells. More romantic than any seaside date, at least to them. Life was still poor. Tiny rooms of freezing winters, not enough food. She joked again. Luxury means butter tonight. But no matter how cold the city got, their passion burned hotter. Every failure? Fueled every setback? Momentum. Cold, hunger, loneliness. They turned it all into strength. Their lab, small as it was, felt like the center of the universe. Tiny particles, flashing with unknown secrets. And they knew what they were working on next would change everything. Radium, a key to the future. Something invisible but powerful beyond imagination. Two unusual people, becoming an unstoppable force. As the saying goes, great minds think alike. And sometimes, they changed the world together. In 1903, she won the Nobel Prize. The scientific world applauded. A history wrote her name in ink that wouldn't fade. She stood at the peak, smiling, proof that every sacrifice had meant something. But life has a way of turning without warning. 1906, Pierre died in an accident. And just like that, everything collapsed. From the summit, into the abyss. Grief didn't knock. It flooded. Loneliness tightened around her. Someone asked, "How do you not break?" She smiled. But this time, it hurt. "Life doesn't give me surprises," she said, "it gives me shock packages." And still, bread and tea. Still, the lab. Still, riding through the freezing streets of Paris. Science became her anchor. Beakers, instruments, radium, polonium, still glowing, still calling her forward. Every successful experiment whispered something. The world may be cruel, but you can still change it. She compressed grief into energy, used it to move forward. Some people stop, some people retreat. She didn't. She kept working, kept researching, kept living. Every tear absorbed into science, every blow converted into fuel. "Don't you feel sad?" people asked. She answered quietly, "I do. But I still have my equations." Others cried into pillows. She wrote notes. Grief and science. Two flames, burning side by side. Glory and loss. Two opposite forces she had to balance. And she did. Breath by breath. Step by step. "I can't stop," she reminded herself, "I won't stop." Paris moved on around her. But she kept writing. Still holding beakers, still holding on to purpose. Life was harsh. She became stronger. Pain became her teacher. And as the saying goes, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. For her, it made her sharper, more determined. The future still had secrets, and she wasn't done uncovering them. After Pierre's death, she stood alone. Cold wind in the streets, dim light in the lab. But she didn't stop, because the world doesn't pause for grief. She became the first female professor at the Sorbonne. Standing at the podium, her name called out. Students watched her with curiosity and respect. A woman professor. She smiled. Physics doesn't care about gender. Notebooks flipped open of formulas filled the air. She wasn't just teaching physics. She was teaching courage. At home, she was a mother. Her daughter once asked, "Mom, can you really do science?" She smiled. "Of course. Science is more fun than toys." Life wasn't easy. Housework, research, teaching, parenting, all running at once, like a perfectly chaotic system. Breakfast, bread and tea, sometimes luxury butter edition. She joked, her children learned to laugh, and to be strong. Then, 1911, another Nobel Prize. Chemistry this time. She became the first person in history to win two. That broken shed of a lab? She turned it into a temple of science. Flasks glowing softly as if whispering, "You were right. Keep going." Students were amazed. She smiled. Work hard, and add a little madness. Because that was her formula. In the lab, worn clothes, stained hands, but shining brighter than gold. Paris could freeze over. It still wouldn't match her inner fire. Her daughter grew up, learning experiments, recording data, living among formulas. And later, she too would win a Nobel Prize. She laughed once and said, "Guess greatness runs in the family DNA." Humor. Still her weapon. Still her gift. Her battlefield wasn't just the classroom. It was the lab. Every experiment. A duel with the unknown. Poverty. Cold. Loneliness. She met them all with wit and intelligence. Impossible, people said. She answered with results. Every drop of sweat turned into brilliance. Every failure, just the next step forward. She balanced everything. Teaching, research, writing, family. Like a system running multiple threads at once. Sometimes tired. Sometimes lost. But always coming back. With a smile. On quiet nights. Lab lights glowing. She held a beaker in one hand. And the future in the other. Life shock packages. She handled them all. Turned pain into power, loneliness into focus. Nothing stopped her. Not poverty, not loss. Her gaze. Brighter than radium. Stronger than any formula. She kept pushing forward. Not just for herself, but for everyone who would come after. Each discovery, a step higher for humanity. In the lecture hall, she was wisdom. In the lab, she was unstoppable. On the streets, just a woman on a bicycle, hair messy in the wind, but heart full of light. And in that light, she changed the world. Meanwhile, in a Paris lab, something strange was happening. Henri Becquerel had found a mysterious glow. No sunlight, no flame. And yet, it shined. Scientists were puzzled. She looked at the data and had a thought. Atoms are acting up. She gave it a name. Radioactivity. Not magic, science. But it implied something radical. Atoms aren't stable. They're not calm little spheres. They're restless, unpredictable, almost like they have moods. Sometimes excited, sometimes glowing, sometimes misbehaving. Sounds a bit like teenagers in love, right? Atoms, the building blocks of everything, weren't quiet at all. They were alive with energy. She was so excited, she couldn't sleep. Every experiment felt like a conversation with the universe. Atoms were no longer silent. Science was no longer stable. And for the first time, she knew she was touching something fundamental. Outside, Paris wind brushed the windows. Inside, liquids glowed softly in glass, like they were winking at her. She smiled. So, you have moods too. Humor and science, dancing together. One simple word, radioactivity. But it shook the foundations of reality. Atoms were no longer static objects. They were dancers, full of energy, full of mystery. And she had just opened the door. As they say, curiosity killed the cat. But in her case, curiosity lit up the universe. She didn't stop at discovering radioactivity. Not even close. Discovery was just the spark. Now she wanted the fire. She wanted the elements behind it. So she named one polonium, a quiet tribute to her homeland, Poland, and another, radium, because this one was going to change the world. But finding them? That was a whole different story. We're talking tons of raw ore, shoveling, crushing, boiling, dissolving, again, and again, and again. Days turned into months, months blurred into years. And in the end, all that work, for just a few grams. Yeah, grams. The efficiency, let's just say, finding these elements was harder than finding the one. Every tiny bit they extracted felt like winning the lottery. In the lab, her hands were stained, her clothes permanently yellowed by chemicals. She looked around and joked, "Welcome to the luxury lab, great atmosphere, unforgettable smell." And then, inside a glass beaker, radium glowed. Soft, mysterious, alive. In a scientist's world, that glow, worth more than gold. Polonium gave her strength, radium gave the world something even bigger. A revolution in medicine. Cancer, tumors, diseases that once felt like death sentences now had a new enemy. She didn't invent a cure, but she did something just as powerful. She invented hope. Tiny elements, massive impact. Every successful experiment felt like handing the world a gift it didn't even know it needed. Back in that rough little lab she once shared with Pierre, there had been laughter and equations in equal measure. Now he was gone. But the lab? Still alive. Every drop of liquid, every faint glow, like a quiet voice reminding her, "You're still needed. And you're not done yet." That was her strength. Tons of rock, grams of discovery. And somehow the world would never be the same. Polonium, her roots, radium, our future. Science and humor, side by side like a strange kind of magic. Was it slow? Sure. But as the saying goes, Rome wasn't built in a day. And she had something stronger than speed. She had patience. Paris outside was cold as ever, a wind cutting through the streets. But inside the lab? Light. The glow in those beakers outshined any flame. She stood there, smiling, data in hand. Because sometimes, the smallest discoveries move the biggest worlds. Every measurement, every refinement, felt like footsteps echoing through history. And science, it was starting to glow just like her. But she didn't just find elements. She built a system, a whole new way of doing science. Her measurements, precise down to absurd detail. Her experiments, repeatable. structured, reliable. Radioactivity wasn't just a strange glow anymore. It had rules, patterns, meaning. In her lab, everything shimmered: glassware, instruments, faintly glowing substances. She stood in the middle of it all like a conductor, orchestrating physics and chemistry into one seamless performance. Every number mattered, every data point told a story. She even invented new tools just to measure things too small for anyone else to detect. People said, "Isn't this a bit too complicated?" She smiled. That's the fun part. Because for her, complexity wasn't a problem. It was a playground. She didn't just experiment, she documented, organized, explained, turned chaos into clarity. What used to be mysterious became teachable. What used to be random became repeatable. Students could now follow her methods. Science wasn't luck anymore. It was a system. She set the standard, defined the field, connected measurement, experiment, and theory like links in a chain. Others discovered elements. She gave them a place in the logic of the universe. Someone once asked her, "Be honest, are you a little crazy?" She laughed. Of course. Science isn't exactly normal. And she meant it, because every experiment challenged reality. Every flicker of light was a new word in the language of nature. She didn't just find something new, she created a whole new way of understanding. Radioactivity stopped being mysterious. It became measurable, predictable, real. She changed how scientists observe, record, and think. And just like that, her name wasn't just remembered, it was built into the foundation of science itself. Outside, Paris winds howled through the streets. Inside, the lab lights stayed on, beakers glowing, notes piling up. And she kept going, because once you change the rules of the game, you don't stop playing. And her work, it didn't stay in the lab, it changed medicine. Radiation therapy was born. Cancer treatment entered a new era. Before this, cancer felt like an immovable mountain. Doctors helpless, patients hopeless. Now, there was a new approach. Precise, targeted, like aiming directly at the problem. Cancer cells, think of them like rebellious employees. She basically found a way to fire them. Hospitals began to glow with machines in careful hands. Doctors leaned in, focused. Every treatment, a chance. Every success, a little more time, a little more life. She once said, "Science shouldn't just shine, it should help people." And this was science doing exactly that. Out on the streets, Paris looked the same, but inside hospitals and labs, everything had changed. Radioactivity wasn't just a curiosity anymore. It became a guardian. Tiny particles, carrying enormous hope. Then came war. World War I. Chaos, fear, destruction. People ran away from the front lines. She drove toward them, not with weapons, with X-ray machines. Her mission: save lives. Soldiers called her Little Curie. Picture it: a beat-up vehicle, muddy roads, explosions in the distance. And there she was, driving, teaching, scanning injuries. She even joked, "Don't worry, science is gentler than bullets." Inside field hospitals, machines hummed. Each X-ray image, a map of survival. She trained doctors and soldiers to locate fractures, bullets, hidden damage. While others fled, she showed up. That kind of courage? It made people admire her, and honestly, a little afraid of her too. Because she didn't just understand science. She believed in it. Mud, cold, danger. None of it stopped her. Because she knew knowledge could save lives. Every scan, a flicker of hope in the darkness. But radioactivity didn't stop with medicine. It opened a door. A big one. The atomic world. For the first time, humanity really started paying attention to atoms. Tiny particles with massive energy inside. Her discoveries led straight into nuclear physics. And from there, energy, power, possibility. But also, danger. Because science itself? It's neutral. Atoms don't choose good or evil. They just follow the rules. Bombs, energy, healing? That part. That's up to us. She once joked, "Atoms don't rob banks. They don't turn on lights either." In the lab, she kept working, measuring, calculating, observing. Each experiment felt like a conversation with the universe. Unpredictable? Sure. But she had a method. Outside, the wind tapped against the windows. Inside, she watched that faint glow and thought about the future. The atomic door had been opened. What came next? That depended on humanity. She taught her students more than formulas. She taught responsibility. Because, as the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility. Every particle held potential. Every discovery came with a choice. Science is a tool, and the hand that holds it decides everything. She understood that, and she never stopped reminding others. The glow flickered again. She smiled, because this story, it wasn't over. Not even close. Do you remember that glowing material? The first time she saw it, her eyes lit up like city lights at night. Others saw rock. She saw possibility. That glow felt like a secret, like power, like temptation. It was a gift, and a price. It brought her fame, discovery, recognition, but also pain. Her hands absorbed that invisible energy. She chased the light, and slowly, the light consumed her. Still, she smiled. Still, she joked. Someone once told her, "You take this too seriously." She replied, "Maybe I'm just the only person who took shine and burn literally." There was humor in that, but also truth, because science isn't safe. It's beautiful. It's dangerous. It rewards. It punishes. And because of that, it moves the world forward. Every experiment, every measurement, every flicker of light, a reminder. Knowledge is power. But courage is the key. She didn't just discover the world. She changed how it works. Atoms were no longer mysterious. Radioactivity was no longer strange. She gave science structure, and meaning, and something more. Humanity. Paris winds brushed past the lab windows. Streetlights flickered outside. Inside, her legacy glowed on. Every drop, every beam of light. A trace of her. Her smile, her humor, her courage, her mind. She lit up the world, and rewrote its rules. She didn't just discover reality. She transformed it. The people who change the world usually just think one step deeper. If this story made you see things differently, hit like, subscribe, and save it. See you in the next story.